All right, so good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here in today's presentation of where to go birding this spring with Luke Safford. My name is Donito Burgess. I'm the Community Engagement Manager here at Tucson Bird Alliance. And if you've been on any of our field trips or attended any of our previous presentations, you know we start all of our events the exact same way, and that's by telling you about our mission and why we do what we do. It's pretty simple. We are here to inspire people to protect and enjoy birds. And we feel very strongly that if we can get you out at some of these beautiful places that Luke's going to talk about this morning, see some of the incredible birds we're fortunate enough to have in the area, you almost can't help but be inspired and want to protect these birds and these places moving forward. So we appreciate you all being here this morning. We appreciate Luke putting this together for us. And with that, I'll go ahead and turn it over to you, Luke.
Hey, thanks, man. Appreciate it. It's good to be here. It's always fun to talk about places that we love, places where we can go birding, places where we can spend time together. And there's so many different options around Southeast Arizona. And we're going to be talking about specifically, we're going to be moving towards the Chiricahua Mountains pretty soon. That's going to be the main area that I'm going to talk about as we go about our talk today. But spring is kind of maybe some of you are on the call, maybe from the East, maybe you're from DC, maybe you're from Chicago, maybe you're from Washington State up north. And it might be hard to think about it being spring pretty soon. But actually, here yesterday it was 80 degrees, and I was wearing my shorts out on our Sweetwater Wetlands field trip, and it just felt like the Bell's Vireos and Lucy's Warblers were going to be here any day. So it's not too early to talk about spring, and it really is. People, what are the best times to come visit Southeast Arizona for birds? I always tell them two different time periods: April and May during spring migration, or really my favorite is April. Sorry, August, and then September, the first part of September. But those two general time frames are always really the best, in my opinion. And April being the day that or the month that we do most of our big days. So there's a lot of variety, there's a lot of movement, there's a lot of birds coming through, and so it's a fun time to be here and to be birding. We think about usually warblers, and we think of flycatchers and all those birds that are migrating up, black-headed grosbeaks and western tanagers. But don't forget about all the swallows too. I love this beautiful picture from Mick of this violet green swallow.
Right.
There's at least one really good spot that we're going to talk about today for violet green swallows and white-throated swifts. So yeah, just it's think about all the swallows, think about all the hummingbirds that are coming through. And when you think about spring, different birds migrate through at different times. So that's something that you really should be mindful of when you're planning your visit, planning your bird trip is, hey, I'm going to be going to Pinery Canyon in the Chiricahua Mountains, and I'm going to be going there in March. Going there in March is a lot different than going there in May. Going there in May is a lot different than going there in October. So just, being mindful of what birds are present. And if you've never been here, that's kind of hard to figure out, or it used to be. It's not really so hard anymore. And I just want to show you real quick how to look at that because it's very important to think through like what birds will be coming through. Wilson's warblers come through a little earlier, sulfur-bellied flycatchers come through later. So I want to share this with you. So I'm going to I'm going to switch screens to share with, and I'm going to go to eBird. So if you're thinking about going to a location, maybe one that we talk about today, or maybe another one that you know about that you're going to visit here when you're in Tucson, is you go to ebird.org and go to the bar charts or the explore function and then bar charts, and then click on bar charts. And then what you want to do is you want to select Arizona. That's a state you're visiting. And then on the right, hotspots in Arizona, and then just hit continue. And let's go to Sweetwater Wetlands. That's always a fun one. So this is important to know, just to think about like when birds are going to be coming through. Click on Sweetwater, go down to N and hit continue. And then before it populates everything, I like to change the date to kind of help us think about. Let's go to spring migration. So click on that button. And I'll hit you March through May. And we don't need all these years. We don't need to start in 1900. I like to do about a 5-year time frame. So let's go to 2021 through 2026. Hit continue. And then what it's going to do is thinking, and then it's going to spit out the different bird observations that have happened at this location, and it's going to show you the bar chart instead of waiting for that, because sometimes it does take a little while. I already did one here for Pinery Canyon. And so what we can see, let's go down to flycatchers because I think the flycatchers show a really cool pattern here. You can see uh, Hammond's flycatchers start coming in about late March, early April, but Western Wood Pewee doesn't come in until about late April. So if you're planning a trip to the Chiricahua Mountains and you plan on going the first week of April, you probably won't see Western Wood Pewee. You can see that first yellow bar on the left. That's the first week of April. There haven't been any sightings there. And then the the increase in number from the third week of April until about the third week of May. So the third week of May is about like when you can, hey, I'm gonna go to Pioneer Canyon. Yeah, they're pretty common there. I will see a Western Wood Pewee there. That's one to be looking for. You can see the same thing with all these birds. You can see a lot of them come in about the first or second week of April. And if you go down to the warblers here, you can see different hermit warblers. They really, between the last week of April and the second week of May, when they're most common, and then they're gone. They don't breed here. You can see that pattern there. And so these bar charts are really cool. So just think about that when, let me go to new share here, back over to it. Think about that when you're thinking about like what time of spring you're going to go, because March and May are totally different. As you go later in the year as well, the higher elevations grow in diversity. So we'll talk about some higher elevations like Barfoot Park, Rustler Park. The later in the spring or early summer that you go, the higher diversity. This is also a really good time to listen for owls. I'm not going to talk about owls so much today, um, but the Chiricahua Mountains are great for owling. Key things to remember, it's you don't there's specific owls that you're not supposed to use playback for. And honestly, this is when they're breeding, so it's best not to use any playback at all. Basically, all you need to do is just go out to one of these spots at night and just get away from the car, stand still and listen. And more often than not, you'll hear whiskered screech owl, or you'll hear Mexican whippoorwill, you'll hear northern pygmy owl, and just take your time and listen. That's really the best thing when it comes to owls. And then as we progress into spring, later in spring and into summer, just start earlier in the morning. I think we all know that it gets warm. So, and they're most active right first thing in the morning. It's amazing how many people ask me, what's the best time to go birding to this location? I'm like, it's always morning. Morning's good. All right. So let's talk about where we're going to go today, and we're going to cover a few different areas in the Chiricahua Mountains. This really is, I think, my maybe besides Sycamore Canyon and the Pajaritos, which is west of Nogales, it probably, not probably, it is my favorite spot to go birding. Not just Southeast Arizona, but really anywhere. I think it goes Sycamore Canyon, and then it goes like South Fork Cave Creek and Pinery and the whole Chiricahua Mountains. Why is that? Well, one is it feels more wild. It's there's not as many people there. It feels like you still have places to explore. Of course, you'll see people. There's a lot of dispersed camping around in different areas, but it's gravel roads, so it doesn't feel like it feels like you're kind of out in the country. Um, and it's just it's beautiful. The scenery there, especially at places like Sunny Flat Campground or against South Fork Cave Creek or up at Barfoot, it's just so beautiful. The vistas that you see up at the top of Onion Saddle, just gorgeous. Walking through, you can see this is a picture of me the very first time I ever visited. I was able to dig this up. This is the first time I ever visited the Chiricahua Mountains, really the first time I ever visited Southeast Arizona. This is back in 2009 when my wife and I decided, hey, we want to live in this place. And yeah, if I had my binoculars down, you'd see I don't have any gray. In fact, I don't even have a beard right there, which is kind of different. But this is me in South Fork Cave Creek. And the first time I was probably looking at a Hutton's Vireo or Plumbeous Vireo or bridal titmouse. I remember that day just plain as could be, walking into, driving up into Portal and seeing summer tanagers and hooded orioles and blue grosbeaks just flying out everywhere around us. And it really got me. And I realized as I was planning like where to talk about this coming uh, time, I had never talked about the Chiricahua Mountains. I've talked about little parts, but not the specific route that we'll cover today, which is basically Pinery Canyon to Portal. You could do it in a day. Danito and I did it in a day, like a half a day, actually, last year during our birdathon. But it's to really get it, it's good to cover it in like 2 or 3 days. You can either camp out there. There's a lot of different campgrounds, or you can stay at Portal Peak Lodge or Cave Creek Ranch or any of the other. There's probably some Airbnbs around there too. What the Chiricahuas are really known for is that it's really the only spot in all of the United States where you can see Mexican chickadee. And so if you want to add Mexican chickadee to your life list and you don't feel like going into Mexico, then you need to go to the Chiricahua Mountains. It's also a really good spot for blue throat and mountain gem, which can be hard in other spots. Here's something else that it's good for. Let's go to this. I'm going to play this, see if you can see what's in this video here. There it is.
Wow, that was cool.
You can hear my wife in the background say, "Wow, that is cool." You see those bears running through there? Hopefully, you're able to see those bears. It was just with my phone outside of my car window along South Fork, but I'll tell you, I've never been in a mountain range where I've seen so many bears. Santa Rita Mountains comes pretty close, but I've seen a lot of bears. When I say a lot, be like half the time in there. Maybe like, I mean, I've probably been in the Chiricahua Mountains probably about maybe not half. So honestly, like I've probably been there about 15 times and I've probably seen bears 6 or 7 of those 15 times. So like just under 50%. Like it's maybe I've been there more. It's somewhere around probably about 35 to 40% of the time I've seen bears when I've been out there. And it's just there's a lot of wildlife. Like I said, it's kind of a wild, kind of rustic area. You never know what you're going to see out there. Coatimundi and black bears and of course, you know, all the all the white-tailed deer and everything else that's up there. So let's talk about this route. These are the areas that we're going to look at. Pioneer Canyon, and then up at the Pioneer Canyon's on the west side of the Chiricahuas, and then we'll look at the map a little bit too. But up on the top, we got Barfoot and Rustler. They're kind of close to each other. And then as you drop over on the east slopes of the Chiricahuas towards Portal, one of the next really good locations to stop and bird is East Turkey Creek, right where the road kind of meets the road that goes to Paradise. That's another little, I wouldn't say town, it's more like a group of houses basically. And but there's a where the two roads meet at the East Turkey Creek. And then there's a side road that goes off to Herb Martyr Campground, but there's also another campground there called John Hands. We'll look at that. And of course, the Southwest Research Station, South Fork, Sunny Flat Campground, and Portal, all on the east slopes. And it kind of, you know, Pioneer Canyon is like around 7,000 foot elevation. Barfoot and Rustler are going to be, north of 8,000, well north of 8,000 at times. And then East Turkey Creek, as we go back down, it's going to be probably around 6,500, 6,000 maybe 55. And then John Hands and the research station in South Fork are still up in this dominated by sycamores and oaks and all that. So it's going to be some between like 5 and 3,500. And then Portal gets down lower. So like Portal is kind of like the lower end. And That's where you get more of your snoring desert birds. And so it's a pretty cool drive. If you do the whole drive, you get a lot of variety because of the different habitats that you're in. Let me show it to you on the map. I think it's always good to just kind of get a feel for the bigger picture of where it's at in relation to Tucson. So here we go. I think you can see the Google map here. You got Tucson off to the left. It's, the drive to Wilcox is about an hour, hour and a half, something like that, depending on how fast you drive. And then you can see from Wilcox over here to Pinery. So this kind of shows all the different spots. You got Wilcox, and then you drive out on Highway 186, like you're going to the Chiricahua National Monument. And then here, as we scroll down into here, you'll you'll drive out. You'll see all the signs for the Chiricahua National Monument, but then you kind of bypass that road that takes you up into there, and then you'll get on this. This is the Pinery Road, and right around somewhere in here is where it turns gravel. And this whole section that goes through like rolling grasslands and oak trees, it's not a bad road, but it's also can be rutted. So it's not like big potholes, or you don't need four-wheel drive or anything like that. But like when you're driving on a gravel road and you're driving on those, it's just, you know, it's not it's not smooth. All right. So when you're driving on these roads, you don't need four-wheel drive, but you do need to just realize that you're going to need to take your time and it's not going to be smooth. Maybe the only time when you would might need high clearance is when you go up here to Barfoot Park or Rustler. So you can see Pinery Canyon Campground is going to be right before you start doing all these switchbacks. Right around in here, and you can see you make like a little switchback here. You're going to start going up. You're going to move from the grass oaks to more of the sycamore dominated Madrean evergreen. And then once you get into Pinery, you'll see from the pictures that I share, big pine trees. Uh, it like I said, 7,000 foot elevation. So you get into like mixed evergreen. You move up out of the sycamores and you move into more of the pine trees and other evergreens. This right here, this is called Onion Saddle. So right there, this is the top. Oh, there you can see Onion Saddle right there. And there's a turnoff. This road, it's not dicey, but it does get a little dicey when you go to Barfoot. So having a high elevation or a high, high clearance on your vehicle is good there. And then from Onion Saddle, then you drop down. And this is a beautiful route, but you just take your time. And honestly, there's a lot of other good spots where you can just stop alongside the road, look for band-tailed pigeons and all sorts of great stuff. The East Turkey Creek spot is right here, right where you can see the creek right there. Paradise Road that goes off, and this is a good spot. And we'll talk about all these, but I just want to show you on the map. And then before you get to the research station will be right about here, just below this turnoff. And this turnoff takes you can go to Herb Martyr Campground at the end, but the John Hands waterfall area, and that's one way you can look it up on your Google Maps. There's a little dispersed campground there. There is a bathroom down at the end of Herb Martyr, but this will be one of the spots. And then this is you've heard me reference South Fork Cave Creek a few times. That's this section. You can see we're dropping down, and this is flatter and level. And actually, the pavement that turns into paved road about right there. This section, the South Fork, is gravel, but super, super easy. A Prius could do it, sort of thing. And then you keep on going through. This is all the sycamore dominated area of the Cave Creek, and then Portal. All right. So with that on the map, I'll just kind of scroll back. So this section, this takes a while to drive. It just take your time. What I recommend if you have more in one day is you can come around much faster. You can come around into New Mexico and get to Portal. It's probably like um, probably three hours or so to Portal. There is a gas station, I think, if I remember right. There is a gas station around here in Portal, but I always fuel up in Wilcox, and then that usually carries me through for 2 or 3 days at least. And then if you stay in Portal, then you can visit these areas, in the days that you're staying there. All right, let me go back and we'll start. Oh, I think I just screwed something. There we go. All right, that's what I wanted. Let's start in Pinery Canyon Campground. Pinery is the first one as you're coming up from the west side from Wilcox, and you go up through that kind of grassland, oak dominated area, past the monument, and you keep going up the mountain, and then you're going to get in these pines. You can see this is Donito. This is my son Brock. This is Alex, our Sweetwater Wetlands coordinator. This is us last year when we were doing our birdathon. We stopped here and had Mexican chickadee. This is a great spot for Mexican chickadee. And if you get it here, it means you don't have to go up you don't necessarily need to go all the way into Barfoot or Rustler Park to find it. This really is the best spot. You can see a vehicle back here. This is a little dispersal campground, small dispersal campground. You'll come up on it and you'll just park right in that campground area. And then your birding consists of birding, walking around the campground, but then just walking the road. Super easy. You can see the road behind it. It's not a hard road to walk on. There's not a lot of elevation gain when you are walking. You can walk up and get some elevation gain if you want, but you don't necessarily need to go that far. I'd say when you're walking here on the road, you probably don't need to walk more than a quarter mile at the most. You can just kind of the best spot for um, so to our left, if you're walking down the road, can be good, but you want to walk kind of up the road to the right from where we're at, and that's where the best spot for the chickadees are at. So kind of walk up the road as you go up towards the top, but there's not a lot of elevation gain in this part. And you can see it's big ponderosa pines. You can also see that, and this is late April, and we're all wearing coats except for my son. He's crazy. And he's 17, so he thinks he can do whatever he wants. But you will be cold. It's colder up here, and which is awesome. And this was not in the morning. This was like later in the day. So anytime that you're here is really good birding. You don't necessarily need to, there's you don't need to leave super early to bird Pinery Canyon. You can bird any time of the day. And here's what you're really looking for, the Mexican chickadee. It doesn't look too much different than like a black cap chickadee, but you can see there are some little differences. I'm trying to think of how to explain the difference. I think the black on the throat kind of extends a little bit more into the back of the body. It just the darker, the bigger cap almost. And then the body is just kind of darker, but it does have a different call. The good thing is it's the only chickadee that you'll see up here. You'll have bridled titmouse for sure. But you're not going to like, oh, I wonder if that's a black cap chickadee. No, it's Mexican chickadee. It's the only chickadee you'll have. There's a lot of other great birds, though. It's not just Mexican chickadee. There's western flycatchers. There's broad-tailed hummingbirds. This is the best spot along this whole route that we're going to talk about for buff-breasted flycatcher. In fact, buff-breasted flycatcher is fairly like, I think they're expanding a little bit, but it's not one that, we don't get very many up in the Catalina Mountains near here in Tucson. We don't get a lot in the Santa Rita Mountains. There's a couple spots in the Huachucas on the east slopes, like up Carr Canyon, but you do need a four-wheel drive to get up to that. Most of the time, the road isn't very good. And so these west slopes of the Chiricahuas can be really good for buff-breasted flycatcher, and this is probably the best spot for it. It's also a great spot for Grace's warbler and red-faced warbler. So what I found in the Chiricahuas, red-faced warbler is a little bit harder to get on the east slopes. It's the Pinery up to Barfoot and Rustler. That is where I would look for red-faced warbler. Once you start dropping down it just becomes a little bit harder. So if you want to add red-faced warbler to your Chiricahua list, start looking around Pinery and up into the higher elevations of of Barfoot and Rustler Park. But this is not a spot to overlook. This is if you're into camping, staying here at night, uh, you might be surprised by a few of the owls that you hear, and it's a fantastic spot. We'll have some time for questions here in a little bit. If anything, just to allow me to grab a drink of my water here. But in a couple moments here, we'll have some time for questions if anything comes up. So moving on up. So once you get to Pinery and you start leaving Pinery, the road really starts winding and up to the top of the mountain to Onion Saddle. And Onion Saddle is going to be around 8,000 feet. And then from there, you can just drop over into the east slopes, or you can take the side road that takes you up to these two parks, Rustler Park and Barfoot Park. Now, both of these have kind of been hit a little bit with fires in the past. So you'll see a lot of fire damage up there, but the birding up there is still really good. There is a bathroom up at Rustler. There is no bathroom at Barfoot, and there is no bathroom at Pinery. There's a lot of pines to go behind, but that's about it. But Rustler, if you're really itching for something, you can go over there. The road to Rustler is not as bad as I remember the road to Barfoot being. But honestly, if I'm gonna pick one of these so-called parks to go bird, I'd probably pick Barfoot. There's just more shade. There's a little bit more. There's a lot of just open pines. Like what you see in the background here is a lot of open pines at Rustler, and there's just more vegetation at Barfoot. Barfoot, you're more likely to see red-faced warbler. Rustler Park, I think you'd be more likely to see something like pygmy nuthatch, western bluebird. Both are good. There have also been short-tailed hawks seen up here in the past. This has historically been a good spot for those. Um, let's see. Yeah, just more dispersed camping up here as well. And you can see it's about this sign right here is probably, oh, at the most a half a mile from your turnoff from Onion Saddle. So it's about 1.5 miles to either spot. Sorry, I had to get some water. And so let's talk about some of the birds that we could see up here. Acorn woodpeckers for sure, especially the Rustler area. They like those big open pines and some of the burned areas. Acorn woodpeckers and northern flickers there. Lots of good habitat for woodpeckers. I have had Montezuma quail at Rustler Park just walking around in the pines, so they do get up to that high elevation. That's one thing that when I do think of the Chiricahuas, I think of Mexican chickadee. I think of copper-tailed trogon on the west slopes. I think of the east slopes. I think of blue-throated mountain gem, and then I think of Montezuma quail. Like it's probably the area where I've had Montezuma quail the most. But also up at the top, like Steller's jays, as you drop back down, you're at the highest elevation, so you're going to get the highest elevation birds. You won't get as many Mexican jays up there, but as you drop down, you won't have any more Steller's jays. So make sure you get that when you're up here on these high points. Pygmy nuthatch, western bluebird. This is also the best area in the Chiricahuas for olive warbler. And I think it's, well, actually, I've had it at both locations, Barfoot and Rustler. They have a really specific call. I probably should have put it on here, but and even I can hear. I don't have the greatest of ears, but I can pick up those olive warblers. They usually call quite a bit. And then western tanagers. As you drop further down, you're going to get more hepatic tanagers, and as you drop even further down, like below the research station, you'll start getting summer tanagers. But up here, the western tanagers, especially at Pinery and these two park locations. All right, one more area, then we'll do a quick time for questions. And I'm going to actually bring up the map again. Let me go back to our Google map. Let's go to that. And I'm actually going to, let's see, I'm going to zoom down here if it'll let me. I'll show you Turkey Creek. Let's go to right there. Then we'll turn this off. I'm going to see if it gives me a road view. Oh, it doesn't. I was looking for a picture of what this looks like because I know I have one and I couldn't find it. But just to show you, here is here is Barfoot, and here here's the turnoff for Barfoot Onion Saddle. You're gonna drop down. This is a pretty steep road. Okay, I've taken a group of folks down here uh, in for an overnight field trip, a special field trip in a 15 passenger van, and a few of them were they weren't scared, but they weren't prepared for it. So just be prepared that it's not a bad road. You just take your time, but it's steep, and you can see it just kind of curves down here, and it's pretty dry. There's not a lot of water sources all through here. Uh, some precipitous drops down where the water sources are at. But then what happens when you come around here and this is kind of a lookout area and you can look out down over the canyon here. It's gorgeous. But then as you come down, you get to the water source. So I've never been here when there hasn't been water in Turkey Creek. And there's no like parking, big parking area or anything. And you'll know it when you have to cross, when you're on the gravel road and you have to cross the water in your car. What I usually do is I try to park before that, try to park right up in here. There should be like a little pull out or something and park there and then just kind of walk this area. This is kind of it's not, it's kind of a drop off here on I guess this would be the east side of the road. It's kind of a drop off. It kind of comes down, and then it's like a drainage right here. And so this Paradise Road it slopes down into the creek, and but you can walk the forest road up a little bit past Paradise. I'd walk from like the creek to maybe like I don't know. Uh, you could go, not quite a quarter mile, but you could walk up here. This whole section here is really good. This has been my favorite location to see, not just here, but also to see northern pygmy owl. I remember I've had it there a couple times. I remember one instance specifically. This was in I think June of 2017. This is not my picture, by the way. This is Tom Brown's picture. Um, I hardly ever. I should carry. I really should have a camera, but I really don't use it. But I remember walking this area of the road with a group of kids. I was doing a young birders camp with Homer Hansen. We were staying at the research station, and one little segment of the young birders camp, we drove up to Barfoot and on our way back down, we stopped here at East Turkey Creek. We were walking around, and then all of a sudden, we didn't even hear it, but we saw it. We saw this pygmy owl that was up in one of the I think it was a ponderosa pine, and or whatever pine they have there, Apache pine or something like that. And it was up there, and you could see the tail. You don't see it as well right here, but a lot of times the tail is kind of cocked off to the right or to the left, and we saw that, and it was perched up, and all the kids got to see it through the scope. But just yeah, I remember that plain as day. And oftentimes we'll hear pygmy owls, but we won't always see them. And this is a good spot to see them. There's quite a few, and they're probably more than we uh, even recognize. So it's a worthwhile spot to stop. Other birds that I've had there that I think this is a good area for: dusky cap flycatcher, zone-tailed hawks flying over. This east slopes of the Chiricahuas from about here, from Turkey Creek down to South Fork. Great spots for zone-tailed hawk. Just there's going to be turkey vultures flying over. Just check all of them for that white band on the tail. And that's going to be one of the ways to differentiate it. Also look at the head and the head shape and a little bit of the pattern, but they look so much like turkey vultures. So just be sure to look at all those. Hermit warblers, when they're coming through in migration, this is a great spot. They love this type of habitat. And this is where you really start getting hepatic tanagers because you get a mix of these oaks that are in with the firs too, and and pine trees. So it's a good mix. It's a beautiful area. Just walk along the road. You could take the road from. We aren't going to talk about it, but you could take the 42B road over to Paradise. Um, you can get some really good birds out there. It's a good area for juniper titmouse as you start working out that way. Not as many good spots in this route for juniper titmouse, but if you drive out that way, better chance. But you got to stop at Turkey Creek. Donito, any questions up to this point? I'm gonna get a drink of water here.
We got a lot of questions, man. Um,
Uh-oh. Uh-oh.
but it's been a
Okay.
very nice interactive chat. Some people have been helping answer. Um, like Cindy Long asked, how far up each side can you go without a higher clearance vehicle? I mean, I know you can kind of drive into those first campgrounds, but if you don't have a high clearance vehicle, how accessible are these areas?
Yeah, I think everything except maybe Barfoot Park should be totally accessible without high clearance. It just take your time. Um, you know, I don't think, none of us are in a rush. So, and there's not like big, huge ruts. It's just a gravel road. So you just got to be prepared for that and big drop offs and all that kind of stuff. But I think like any road, like I had an old Chevy Lumina little sedan and I would have had no problem taking that out there.
Awesome. And then a couple people too just put in a note that the gas station is in Road Forks, New Mexico, not in Portal. And actually
Yes, yes, that's
the
right. That's where it's at. It's
yeah,
a
and then
it's
actually the gas in Road Forks is cheaper than Wilcox. So if you're able to get it in Road Forks, it's a little bit cheaper. Gordon had a question about RV accessibility. I know you and I don't have a lot of experience with that. Steph was able to answer that she did go up there last spring in a small camper van. And it was fine, just don't drive it too fast. But yeah, honestly, I mean, I used to have an RV. I would think anything longer than maybe a 15-foot class A or B wouldn't do it because there's those the hairpin turns up there are really tight. So if you're trying to bring a fifth wheel or a pull behind, I think you'd have some issues up there.
yeah, maybe like I take it to like Sunny Flat and then take a smaller vehicle up the rest of it. But the Sunny Flat campground that we'll talk about outside of Portal is pretty accessible for that, and it's all paved road to that area and all that.
And then cell service in that area. I think Gordon answered, but yeah, if I can remember correctly, I mean it's really only when you get up to those peaks, when you kind of get way up high, and you're kind of have a clear view to the sky. But from what I can recall, if you're down in Cave Creek, you're not going to have cell signal. Is that your recollection as well, Luke?
Yeah, yeah, which is beautiful. It's great not having cell reception. Yeah, so I mean it's a wild area that it is hard to get reception up there. Even when you're in Portal sometimes. And Portal should be fine. The thing you have to worry about when you get into Portal is whether your phone is picking up New Mexico or whether it's picking up Arizona, when the time change happens. Uh, so I've had my phone when I'm in Portal pick up the New Mexico time. So you just gotta not that when you're out there, time doesn't matter as much. So I guess it's not as big a deal. But
And yeah, Scott had a question. Scott Sitter had a question about lodge recommendations. I know you mentioned uh, Portal Peak Lodge, the research. Well, the research ranch, is that open to the public and is that available to stay out there? What do you know about
no,
that?
I don't. I think with special instances it might be. But yeah, I'll talk about some spots to stay here in the next section.
Excellent. And then just Patty had a question about accessing this recording. So just again, for everybody, we are recording this. And so I will send out an email to everyone after a little bit later this afternoon that will have a link to our YouTube channel. I'll upload this to our YouTube channel. So like I said, you can go back and watch this anytime or you can share it with anyone that you want as soon as I send that link to you. And then also real quick before you get back, going, Luke. Gordon made a good point, and he made a good point that applies to a lot of these mountain areas that don't have cell signal. If you download your map while you still have cell signal, you can access it while you're in those mountains. But if you get in the mountains and you don't have cell signal and you try to bring up Google Maps, it's not going to work. So if you do that beforehand, it'll stay on your phone. So that's a great tip, Gordon. And again, it applies to most of these mountains where you'll lose service.
Yeah, yeah, that is true. The good thing about the Chiricahua, it is fairly well signed. Some of these areas, like Pinery Canyon Campground, there's no sign for that. It's just you see a dispersed camp area as you go by it, and so there's no sign for that. But there are signs for like Portal 9 miles, or as you saw in the previous thing, the sign Rustler Park 1 mile, Barfoot Park 1 mile. Uh, you'll see a sign turn off for at the Turkey Creek spot for Paradise. So thankfully there are some good signage. You won't get too lost. There's not a whole lot of offshoot roads except for the ones that we talked about. There's the one from Onion Saddle that takes you out to Barfoot and Rustler. There's one that we just talked about from Turkey Creek going to Paradise. And then the one that we're going to be talking about right here is the turnoff for Herb Martyr, which is right next to the Southwest Research Station, which before you get to the end of the Herb Martyr Road, you come to John Hand's Campground. And Danito and I, when we were on our birdathon last year, I don't know if you remember this spot, dude, but this is where there was that the little creek running through there, and there wasn't a lot of water places besides the Turkey Creek, you know, spot that we drove by, but there weren't a lot of water areas where birds were congregating. Especially this was April 19th when we were out there, and so it was, you know, I mean, it was a dry winter, so like there wasn't a lot of snow runoff. Who knows what it's going to be like again this year, if it's going to be like that. But so you just always are looking for places where there's water. And this John Hand's campground was one of those spots. Had a lot of good flycatchers. It had a lot of warblers that were going through it. We did have chipping sparrows too. So you start kind of dropping down into this. You get a little bit different section of birds. You know, you're moving from the high elevation to mid elevation. So instead of Steller's jay, you start getting Mexican jay. You get Plumbeus vireo, get Hammond's flycatcher, Wilson's warbler, um, painted redstart. Painted redstart you can kind of get throughout the whole thing, but this is a good area for it. And when you're at this little campground, you should expect some people. It's not heavily used, but there are often people who are doing dispersed camping there. And as you come up to the campground, you're going to kind of be up above the creek. Just park there, and then there should be a couple paths that take you down to the creek bed, and just walk up and down, kind of. Especially during migration, sometimes the birds kind of clump together. So once you find a few birds, just kind of wait in that section and see what comes down into the water, or what else you're hearing. And so just kind of be aware of that. This in the past has been an area where people have put out maybe a hummingbird feeder. We'll talk about some other places for hummingbird feeders, including the research station, which is not very far away. But in this area, it's been good for plain cap starthroat, barrier line hummingbird, different rare hummingbirds that might come into hummingbird feeders in this area. Good spot for broad-tailed and blue-throated mountain gem. And rufous hummingbirds, when they're coming through during migration, they don't breed there. Same with calliope, but just being aware of the different hummingbirds that start coming through. And I'm just going to show on the map again where this hit the wrong button again. Where this is at in relation to everything. See, here's the Turkey Creek, and as you drive down, it's a bit of a drive. It's probably, I don't know how exactly far it is, maybe 5 miles or 3 to 5 miles, because here's the research station, and I'm gonna go to a different layer here so you can see the research station right here, and you can pull in here. There is a bathroom here. is a good spot. There's hummingbird feeders right at the research station. As you kind of park in here, there's a visitor center, and then you can walk down, and there's hummingbird feeders down at the end. Don't go into where all the houses are at because it is a working station. But this is a great spot for blue throat and mountain gem, and you can walk around on the roads here. Just walking on the roads can be some of the most productive birding. You don't have to go off on a trail or go crazy. You don't have to walk far distances. Just walking along the road can be really, really good. But you take this forest road outside of the research station, and you can go all the way to the end, which the end is not very far. If I can get this thing. The end ends at a little circle here at Herb Martyr Campground. I've had northern saw-whet owl and flammulated owl in season, spring season actually, right here at dark. So it can be kind of a nice spot to just come to the end and just park there and see what you hear. But about halfway in between the research station and Herb Martyr is John Hand's. And it shows itself here as John Hand's waterfall. I never saw a waterfall, so don't get your hopes up on that. I know my wife loves waterfalls. Uh, Danito, you remember a waterfall? I don't remember a waterfall.
No, there wasn't enough water to be
There
falling
wasn't, but there was
when we were
enough
there.
water for birds. There was
Yeah.
enough water for birds. And so there'll be a little pull out somewhere in here. Hard to tell. Maybe it's right in this section. And you'll park there and then you'll just walk down. It's a bit of a slope. So it's not a bad slope, but it's not real accessible, but so just kind of take that into consideration, and you'll come down and just walk along. There's not a real defined trail along the creek, but it's not hard walking when you get along the creek. And you can kind of walk up as far as you want or walk down, but that's a good location. John Hands, kind of a interest. Herb Martyr and John Hands. Those are two interesting names for campgrounds. Now, I think my next picture, let's see if I'm right. Oh, Blue Throated Mount Gem. We talked about Southwestern Research Station. I would say when you're stop here, go into the little nature shop there, use the bathroom if you want, but buy something from, give them a donation, go and check out the mountain gems. It's the easiest spot for mountain gem. But also when I think of this section between the Herb Martyr Road, John Hand's Campground Road, the research station area, and down to South Fork, not just last year, but multiple times, this is where I've been driving on the road, and then all of a sudden, I see, what is that little bird right in the middle of the road? You see this little guy right here? Montezuma quail. This really is like people are like, where can I go to see a Montezuma quail? Well, you're not guaranteed anything, but the more times you put yourself on this road between the research station and Herb Martyr and the research station and Sunny Flat Campground, the more likely you're going to see Montezuma quail. This is, again, the best spot, maybe besides Sycamore Canyon and the Pajaritos. Again, my other favorite spot. But this area is like, along with that, best location I've ever had for Montezuma quail. They're hard to see, but oftentimes we'll see them right on the gravel road. And then as they get off the gravel road, they go and hide and they become very difficult to see. I don't know if you can see her in this picture or not. I'm going to put a circle around her to help you out a little bit. And this is just with my phone outside of the Jeep that we were driving before Alex scared it away by leaning outside the Jeep too far. And but she was a beauty there. I'm sure that there was a male around there somewhere too. But as you're driving these roads, it's very, very important that you just not just keep your eyes on the road so you don't fall down the cliff driving, but also to look for those quail, because this really is the best spot. And they're hard to see. When they're out on the road, it's a lot easier. At first, when I saw this one, this is the one last year, is I thought it was a mourning dove at first. I was like, that mourning dove doesn't have a tail because it just looked so small and it was just kind of it wasn't walking when I saw it. It was just kind of hunkered down in the road. And I was like, what was that? Oh, we were so excited. So look for those guys. Now, let's go into South Fork Cave Creek, which I think is maybe the most beautiful stretch of all that we're going to be talking about today. The Sunny Flat Campground has the most beautiful views, and it's a it's the Sunny Flat Campground is where it starts to get a little bit easier. Like it's the easy side. Pinery Canyon and the West Slopes, it's very rustic. There's no signs, there's no bathroom. But once you get over to the East Slopes and the Portal area and Sunny Flat Campground, you start having paved roads, you start having bathrooms. There's other campgrounds around in the area too. There's Idlewild, there's another one I'm trying to remember, but these campgrounds are nicer. So someone asked about, if you're bringing an RV in there or, if you're bringing a trailer or anything like that. I would say the east slopes are going to be your best bet. So again, let's look at the map here to get a feel for South Fork. So I'm going to scroll back more and you can see right here is Portal. And the paved way to access this whole area is through New Mexico, through Portal, and then it's just a short drive from Portal on this paved road to past the visitor center, which is kind of a nice spot to stay. Oh, here's the other campground, Stewart, and then Sunny Flat Campground, and then oh yeah, Sunny Flat. That's the one I wanted to see, Sunny Flat. Now we can scroll in and see the road here. Let's look at this. This is what the road looks like. Look at these oak trees. There's the entrance to Sunny Flat. That sign right there probably says full. It does fill up pretty fast. It's kind of a first come, first serve. So you want to make sure to plan that into your vacation. If you're planning on staying there, making sure you get to this location early because it does fill up. I don't know if can we get in through here? Does it take you into the campground? Look at this. You can see here, look up at those mountains right there. And then the campground is back in here. You cross a little creek here and you can see the sycamores and the oaks and the little pines. This is a perfect area at night for whiskered screech owl and for Mexican whippoorwill and looking up in the cliffs for white-throated swifts. It's also when you start getting into good territory for elegant trogon, or actually coppery-tailed trogon. Sorry about that. Change the name. But you can see this is just beautiful. And if you come down here, the campground is not far from the turnoff to South Fork Cave Creek. Am I going the right direction? This would be kind of cool. Oh yeah. So you cross a creek. So this is, as you walk down, this is Cave Creek right here. You can see there's a little bit of water. You can see it. I don't know how well you can see this, but there you can see a little bit of water down there. This is a good spot to bird, but this is not the best spot. Keep going down, and then you'll see a turn off here. If you keep going down this road, this takes you back into Portal. This is a gravel road. This is the South Fork Cave Creek Road. So this is about a mile long of gravel road that takes you down to kind of a parking area at the trailhead. There is a bathroom at that trailhead. Not a beautiful bathroom, but there's a bathroom. And then the trail goes out further from that. We'll talk about that a little bit. But what I love to do when I camp at Sunny Flat Campground, my wife does not want to wake up early. My kids don't want to wake up early, but I love it. I'll get up early and I'll walk from the camp down to the parking lot and back. And by that time, they're just about waking up after around 8:30 or so. And I've already birded for 3 hours because I was out here at 5:30. That's what, if you could do a perfect birding morning at South Fork Cave Creek, that's what you do. You stay at Sunny Flat, wake up at 5:30. This is like early May. Walk out the road, walk back, walk it for 3 hours, and you'll have an awesome list. copper-tailed trogon breed here, Montezuma quail, sulfur-bellied flycatcher once you get later into May. Let me get back to our pictures here. The real PowerPoint. This is from that same bridge that we just saw right there, where the water is flowing a little bit more at different times. It just all kind of depends what time of year you're there. Couple things here before we move on is just like no playback in this area. You're not allowed to do any playback. So I want to emphasize that. There is a longer trail from the end of the road of the South Fork Cave Creek Road where you keep going out the trail. And there's also a little bridge just before that parking area, a smaller bridge that is in my opinion, that's the best birding spot of the whole road. So you want to make sure you walk down to at least that bridge area near the end of South Fork Cave Creek Road. This is a bad picture, but this is one I just got. I like it. It's with my phone through my scope. I'm not very good at it, but what I like about it is that you can see that this male elegant trogon is in here feeding his young inside his little nest hole here. And so they do breed right through there. You want to listen for them, and then that's how you find them. You listen for them. Or if you get there later, there might already be people looking at the trogons. They nest right along the road. It's amazing. But also, if you're walking up the trail past the end of the parking lot, just look at all the different cavities that you see when it comes to the sycamores, because you never know when there might be copper-tailed trogon or sulfur-bellied flycatcher or Arizona woodpecker or whiskered screech owl or something else using these hollows in the sycamores. Some of the other birds so this is down low enough where you start getting Scott's oriole, bush tit. They like the oaks through there. Really good for dusky cap flycatcher, and Montezuma quail again. So down at the end of the South Fork Cave Creek Road, which is just like a mile from that Sunny Flat campground, this is, as you're looking up, there's more cliffs up here, and this is where you want to look for white-throated swifts and zone-tailed hawks. Don't miss that. We almost always have our eyes kind of just in the trees, but look up in the sky up next to those cliffs as well. You could get canyon wren singing through here. This is a great area to listen for canyon wren. Great area to listen for northern pygmy owl as well. I almost always have northern pygmy owls calling. I don't see them as often here as I have at Turkey Creek, but almost always hear northern pygmy owls calling first thing in the morning. And then as you hike up further the trail, depending on the water levels, you could, like my wife here is like walking out in the creek, but it's a beautiful trail. You're in these big sycamore line canyon as you go up, and yeah, it's good to explore. So I think there's like miles of hiking trails that go up from here. Dropping down a little further, once we get out of the actual South Fork Cave Creek, you get more towards Portal. There's different feeder locations that you can go check out. This is a Coatimundi that we had at Cave Creek Ranch a while ago. Cave Creek Ranch is a beautiful spot to visit. It's in between all those campgrounds that we looked at and Portal. You'll see the turnoff as you're going from Sunny Flat Campground to Portal. You see the turnoff on your right. They do well. You don't have to stay there, but someone did ask about places to stay. I would say this is like high level. Portal Peak Lodge is where most people stay, or the camping areas. But this is like if you have the money, stay at Cave Creek Ranch. That's where I would go. If you don't have the money, that's all right too. You get to stay out under the stars, so you can't go wrong either way. But even if you're not staying here, you can go and park it. There's specific parking areas where you're directed to park. And you can sit on these chairs, and they have coatis and blue-throated mountain gems and all sorts of birds coming into the feeders, and just pay a little donation to them. That's why you make sure you do at any of these feeder locations. So Cave Creek Ranch is a good spot for that. Also, there's a house that's owned by Dave Jasper and Elaine Moisen just before Portal. And this is what their feeder setup looks like. You'll see a big water tank on the right side of the road as you're going uh, from Cave Creek Ranch to Portal. You'll see a big water tank, and the house right there. You'll see a little spot, I think a sign that says "Birders Park Here" or something like that. And you'll park just right there next to that water tank. Put something in the little tin for the feeder station, 5, 10, 20 bucks, whatever you feel like. And you can sit there and enjoy a lot of lower elevation birds, hooded orioles, buntings coming through there. You could get varied bunting, I think. All sorts of hummingbirds, black chin hummingbird, broad-billed hummingbird. Could get Lucifer hummingbird right here as well. This is where you really start dropping down, and you can get all sorts of um, birds that you wouldn't get even up in South Fork, and they just become a little bit more common down here. Black-throated sparrow, woodhouse's scrub jay. Could get band-tailed pigeons that come down. Band-tailed pigeons is one that, anywhere from the top all the way down in a portal you can see. But then here you also start getting the white-winged doves and all of that. But it's a nice spot to just stop for like 15 minutes and see what comes to the feeders. And then also just walking around the town of Portal. You got the Portal Peak Lodge right there. And so you could be staying there. You could have lunch there. You could have breakfast there. It's a nice location. Danito and I are going to be leading a 3-day field trip, Tucson Bird Alliance field trip that we'll be staying at Portal Peak Lodge. We're going to be doing that in September. It's a little bit further down the road, but a lot of these birds will still be there by that time. Just walking around the roads there around Portal, you could get crystal thrasher and juniper titmouse. Crystal thrasher kind of here. Actually, I'll show you where I would look where I've had crystal thrasher before. Let's go to our map. And let's get out of this. How do I go back? How do I get out of this? Doop. That X button right there. All right. So Portal's not far from Sunny Flat. And again, this is all paved now. Super easy. Here's the little town of Portal. And when I say little, it's little. This whole Rock House Road right here, here's Portal Peak Lodge. You'd park right here. In fact, let me switch on the layer here. I think this might show it a little bit better. You just take the little turn off into the Portal town and park right here next to the lodge. You don't have to be staying there to park there. Just park right there. Walk down this Rock House Road. Walk down to the end. And as you walk through, especially this section right here, there's usually some houses with feeders, and you can kind of peek in there. Look at the feeder. This is a good area to look for juniper titmouse. And then as you walk back to where you parked, this road is not, there's not a lot of traffic through here. So you can go and you can bird out on this main road, walk out on the road over to this kind of drainage area here. And this section from this drainage area east to about like right in here, this can be a good area to look and listen for crystal thrasher, especially on the north side. Now, if you don't get crystal thrasher there, then you come down a little further to Foothills Road. And there used to be a feeder station right in here. This is used to be, it's Bob Rodriguez's house. He used to have a feeder system there. No longer in service anymore. It's closed. But you can still just kind of park somewhere in here along the road or right around where the wash is at. Walk this section and look and listen for crystal thrasher. This is really the best spot around for that. And don't overlook just birding right in town. Like I said, when I first visited in 2009, I drove in here. And I remember parking right in here. I was looking at my little old Finding Birds in Southeast Arizona book, and it said to park in Portal, so I did that. And I remember first two birds I saw, summer tanager and blue grosbeak. And coming from Washington State and seeing that color and those birds is just like, that's it. And it's a great birding right here in town. Let's go back. Well, I know what's coming next. So from Portal, that's kind of like the end of this section. So this route from Pinery Canyon over to Portal, you can do that in a day. You can do that in 2 days. You can do that in 3 days. I would suggest coming into Portal, staying at the lodge, birding South Fork the next morning, and then going up the mountain, going over to Pinery, coming back. And that would be a day. Stay at Portal Peak Lodge that night. And then early the next morning, go out east. And from east, you go all the way over to the state line. The state line, all the way over here. We'll get to the state line right about here. Here's New Mexico, right here. Actually, this road right here, State Line Road. You would come over here and then go south on State Line Road. There's a tank down here called Willow Tank. We'll go all the way down to, I guess you can kind of see where it's at. On here, it's called Sulphur Canyon Road Tank. Actually, that's Willow Tank. So you can bird this section here, which is a whole nother suite of birds from Bendire's thrasher, scaled quail, lark bunting, just really cool. And so you can get like a bunch of your grassland desert birds. Then you can get all of your kind of oak grassland birds. And you can go up into the mountains and get all of your madrone, evergreen, and pine and mixed fur birds. It's the habitats are endless through here. And so that's kind of the pattern I would do. And so let me just show you here. Here's that summer tanager. This is what that state line. This is I went birding that state line road area with my friend Chad, and he was visiting from town, out of town, and he rented a Charger. So we took the Charger out here, and we got all of these birds: scale, quail, lark, bunting, Bendire's thrasher out, and it just looks big and open. But that's some birds just like that type of habitat. So you go and explore all the different habitats you can find. And want to end with this hepatic tanager. I think that's kind of the bird that I think about when I go into South Fork Cave Creek, along with the more exotic ones like Trogon and Montezuma quail and all that. But hepatic tanager, you'll be hearing these guys all throughout South Fork and up into Turkey Creek and in Pinery as well. So it's a beautiful bird that often gets overlooked, but so many places to visit, so many birds to see, and that's where I would like. I can't believe I hadn't talked about this kind of route before in one of these calls, in one of these events, and yeah, it was fun to kind of relive that, and I can't wait to get out there in end of March, April, May, and then to lead a trip out there in September. And so what we want to do, Danito and I, when we have this trip all lined up and planned and ready to go, you guys are going to be the first ones that we share it with. And this will probably happen in March. So once Danito has that all figured out for pricing and everything, we plan on taking two 15-passenger vans, 7 participants each. And we're going to make all the lodging stuff and all that at Portal Peak Lodge. We'd love to have you join us. Again, that won't be in spring. That'll be in fall. But that's it. August, September, April, May. Those are my favorite times to be there. So could get a lot of herps. It's a great spot for herps, especially later in monsoon season. So that could be a good reason to go in September as well. So now time for any questions. If you guys have any thoughts, or maybe there's a specific bird that you want to look for and just have a question. Maybe it doesn't even pertain to Chiricahuas, but yeah, we'll have like 10 minutes or so for questions if we need that.
So real quick, Luke, there's no questions on the chat, but Peggy did clarify that the public is allowed to stay at the Southwest Research Center. So what I'll do, everybody, when I send out the email that has the YouTube link, I'll go ahead and just link. I'll put 3 links in there. I'll put one to the Portal Peak Lodge. I'll put one to the Cave Creek Ranch, and I'll put one to Southwest Research Station. Those are 3 nice places to
Awesome.
stay. And then Nathaniel also said in the chat too, and Luke, I think, mentioned it as well. There's also a variety of Airbnb, Verbo options down there as well to look into if you want to do that on your own. But I'll put the 3 lodging links in the email that I send out this afternoon.
Right on. That's really cool. And what I'm gonna do too is I'm gonna try and get a link to a bar chart for March through May with these locations that I talked about, not including State Line Road, but the main Pinery to Portal locations that I talked about, and I'll include that link to the bar chart if I can make it work right. We'll share that in the email too. And
All
if you guys
right.
have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask them.
Karen, you've got your hand up. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much. Good day to
Hey,
everybody.
Karen.
Uh, I was thinking, gentlemen, for the people that are wondering whether they have a vehicle or just are uncomfortable coming up from the east and going over, some suggestions about just coming from the east side and just visiting the east side and how you would get there. I get there by going down to Douglas and around because I usually will bird Sierra Vista area first and then just go to Douglas and come back up. So if you're going to just do the east side as opposed to trying to come up the west side because you don't have a vehicle you're comfortable with or whatever, how would either one of you gentlemen do that?
Yeah, this is the route that I would take. Actually, yeah, let me make sure this is showing the right route. No, I want to take
There
this
you
route.
go. Yeah.
Yeah, so this is the route I would take. I would go from Tucson, uh, past the Wilcox exit, past the Arizona New Mexico state line, and then I would take the exit at Road Forks. There is a good Yeah, there is a good gas station there at Road Forks. So if you're coming in from this side, make sure you get gas there, and then come down the New Mexico side, and you'll right before the town of Rodeo, you'll see the Chiricahua Desert Museum, but then there's also a sign that'll point people out towards Portal. And so this is actually pretty fast and to come down pretty easy. And then this road is all paved. And then if you want to do it without going on any gravel, you could just the birding from this section here from Portal over to South Fork Cave Creek is amazing. You don't necessarily have to go all the way up into the wilds of Barfoot and Turkey Creek and Pinery to have an amazing experience in the Chiricahua Mountains. I would say that if you do take this way in from New Mexico, somewhere around in here, you're going to be passing through this section of these kind of big craggy hills. Look for bighorn sheep through there. One time I drove through and there was a herd of bighorn sheep in that craggy mountain area, and with one big ram up on a rock. It was one of the most crazy, beautiful things I've ever seen. So just don't discount your time just driving through this kind of, you know, some people will say boring section, but especially when you'll see the area, these big rocks, and look for the bighorn sheep in there.
Thank you, Karen. Does anyone else have any questions? And again, just, I know if you're like me, I'm sure the moment we end the Zoom call, you'll have three or four questions that come to mind. You'll think, oh, I should have asked that. Again, when I send out the email, I'll CC Luke on it. I'll be on it. So please, if you have questions again that come to mind after we get off the presentation, please reach out to us, respond to that email, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you might come to mind. Phil has a question. What route would you recommend coming up from 82 past Tombstone and Bisbee going towards Douglas? Can this be done in a day? Hold on, you're muted, Luke.
There we go. All right. So if I'm understanding right, it's if you're coming from the Tombstone area.
Actually coming up from Nogales through Patagonia, Sonoita.
Yeah. I've never cut. I think let's see what it says. Yep. So dropping through Sierra Vista and Bisbee. So I I've only I've actually never done this all the way around. And so I don't know as much of what it's like between Douglas and Portal. I do know it's all paved. I do know it's all paved. Um, there's an interesting location that I've never been to. I think this is San Bernardino National Wildlife Refuge here, I think. Or what wildlife refuge is it? Maybe that's over here. Leslie Canyon is really interesting, so you could take a little detour to Leslie Canyon. I've been there, but I haven't done this section through here. Karen's got her hand raised. She says this is your normal way of going, right, Karen?
Yes, it is. And so if I was coming from Nogales, I'm coming usually from Tucson, and I go drop to Sierra Vista. But either way, I go to Sierra Vista, and then continue south and east through Douglas. It's easy, straightforward. There's gasoline to be had in Bisbee. I gassed up because I go and come that way. I find the north route boring because I just don't hate being on the 10. But anyway,
Yeah.
I gas up in Douglas, and make sure you gas in Douglas, because if you're not going to continue north, you have to be sure to have enough gas to get back to Douglas. But the road's fine and smooth and straight.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so I avoid the 10 generally at all costs. And if you get tired, you can, and because I've made the round trip in a day. I've gone from north of Tucson all the way through Sierra Vista, out up to the research station, turned around and came all the way back in the same
Yep.
day. There was a crazy reason for that. I wouldn't suggest doing it today.
Well, Danito
You
and I
don't
did
get to
that
see
last
many
year,
birds. You
so
just see a lot.
yeah.
Yeah, you get to see a lot of freeway, a lot of highway, and very few birds. But I had to do it for a reason. But when I do it on purpose, I go through Sierra Vista
Mm.
and then down to Douglas. And it's
Yeah, I've
really
never
easy
gone
driving.
down around that way because it's longer, like I'm always like, oh, I want to get there now. I want to get there fast. So I don't mind taking that 10 and getting there as fast as I can. But, you could do a loop. You could, just
Yeah.
if it's possible, just take your time going over there and spend a couple days. It is worth it. It really is. But you can't do a day.
Yeah.
We had a question, and I apologize. The username is just 5 consonants, so I don't. It's more initials than a name. Wish I could give you credit, but basically they were asking what areas the 3-day trip in the festival does, both east and west. And so I just wanted to clear that up. So the trip that Luke was talking about, the Friday through Sunday trip that we will be doing, that will be September 25th through 27th. So that one's not a part of the festival. That's going to be a separate trip that we take. And so the festival, again, I'm kind of blanking. Luke, do we go out to the Cherokee? Yeah, we don't go all the way out there to
Too
the
far.
Cherokees. Yeah, it's
Too
too
far.
far. So
Yep.
so there won't be any festival. Um,
We don't want to harsh people out with the day trip. So.
yeah, let's see, the Spring
Oh yeah,
Fest.
not yeah. So the Spring Festival, there is a Spring Festival out of Sierra Vista um, but that is not one that we're a part of. So,
Okay. Yeah.
yep. Well, thanks, guys. I really appreciate it. Glad that we had the opportunity. And like Danito said, if you have any other questions that come up, just let me know. Hey, I see Kathy Baldridge. Hey, we're going to go birding together on March 7th, I think. That's Saturday. Not to Chiricahuas, though. Great to see you all. It's really good. I wish I could call you all out, but yeah. Danito, last words for you, buddy.
Yep. Just again, thank you all so much for coming. We appreciate y'all. Again, if you have any questions, I'll send out a lot of info in the email that I send out. So hopefully that'll take care of most of them. But again, please feel free. So again, just to wrap up, I want to thank all of you for being here. I want to thank you for your support of Tucson Bird Alliance. And last but not least, I want to thank my colleague and friend Luke Safford for putting on a wonderful presentation for us this morning. And so, yeah, thank you all so much, and we hope to see you soon.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank
All
you.
right. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Enjoyed it. Wonderful.
Thank you.